Hey everybody, this is Burke and Simona, and we are back with part 3 of Serverless GraphQL. And Simona, what are we doing today?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Burke, I think you're going to be the most excited about this session because what we're going to do today is basically take a React application and connect it to the backend that we've just built. And it's a simple app, but it's going to be fun.
Sounds so fancy. The word React makes us seem smart. All right. So this is where we left off. Let me collapse this a bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this URL that we've created. That's our public instance of GraphQL, which is this here. This other one is the graphical and the one that we can play around with in the browser, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to take this URL and we're going to create a React app, and we are going to use this endpoint as our GraphQL endpoint in our application.
That's correct. That's exactly what we're going to do.
I've got it. Okay.
Awesome.
What next?
Okay, so in order to get started with React, we're going to have to use create React app to just bootstrap a new application. And
okay.
Hopefully you have it installed in your local.
I do. So let me just move to the part 3 folder. And then just gonna remove all this stuff in here.
Mm-hmm. I love your terminal.
Isn't it nice? I forget where I got this theme. Yes. Okay. All right, we're good. Now let's do create React app. You want me to name it anything special?
Whatever you want.
Oh, voting app. Okay.
Okay. And then, so in our React app, we will need to use a couple of packages in order to connect to our backend. So normally we could just, because as we've seen previously, we can make an HTTP request and we're going to get the response from a GraphQL endpoint. But there's a lot of community projects that have built tools around making things like caching easier and even like parsing the requests and parsing the queries much more easy. And that's why we're going to use Apollo client in this project.
So I'm going to go ahead and open VS Code here.
Yeah.
And then you want me to install some NPM packages, I assume?
Yes, that's correct. So you'll have to install, first of all, GraphQL.
Okay. It's just called GraphQL.
Yeah, and don't press enter.
You know, we can use one of the cool things we can do here in VS Code, since we don't exactly know the names, is we can do, where's dependencies? Is there already a dependencies in here? I just missed it. There it is right there. We can watch this. So we get IntelliSense, and we'll just look for GraphQL. Just this one here.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And then it automatically gives us the right version too.
Whoa.
I know, so neato. All right, so we'll take that one. What else do we need?
We also need the React Apollo library, which has a series of components.
React what?
Apollo.
Oh, is it dash Apollo?
Dash Apollo, yeah.
There it is.
Okay.
We'll get the latest one on that too.
And then we also need Apollo Boost with Dash, yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
Okay, and now we'll just do run an npm install, which will pick up those packages and install them.
Thank you so much for showing me this, Burke.
Uh-oh, what happens?
Ooh.
Failed to parse JSON. Oh, I did something. I left something down here at the bottom. A trailing comma. Don't do that.
Happens to best of us.
I know. All right. Freaking trailing commas.
I mean, in JavaScript, they're allowed. And
I know. I don't get it. Also, you can't do comments in JSON files, which has bitten me before. Because the editor will act like it's cool, like, yeah, no problem, like it's grayed out and everything, but then when you actually try to read the file, it blows up.
I think I've used comments in the application.settings.json file, and it did, VS Code complained about it, but the Azure Functions runtime didn't complain about it.
But it actually worked. There's I think there's a JSON C standard that's like JSON with comments.
Well, maybe they're using that one.
We are installing every npm package in the repository.
The whole internet.
The whole internet is being pulled down so that we can read some data.
Do you think we're installing event stream as well?
We could do what's the command? Do you know the command to like check and see what it is?
By heart, no.
It's like no. Somebody out there knows. Somebody's watching this and screaming at the screen. Okay. All right. So we've got everything installed.
Fantastic.
React app. Now what?
Now we can just start the app, make sure it runs.
Okay. So we'll just do
npm start. Do not trust anyone.
Trust no one.
And once we have this running, we can actually use the Apollo client to start making a connection. Yay!
Awesome. Okay.
Awesome. So if we go back to VS Code and then we open the index.js file,
okay.
Just there, we can first import the Apollo client from I think it's Apollo Boost. I wish names would be much more relevant.
Okay.
It's called Apollo Client.
Apollo Client?
Yeah. And it's the default expert, so you don't need the...
Import Apollo Clients.
Yeah, and now we have to use it.
Oh, gotcha.
So we define a constant client.
Where? Just anywhere?
Just before React, yeah. Okay, and then we initialize a new Apollo client, and we send it as a parameter, an object with the URI as a property.
Like this?
Perfect, yep.
Here it is.
And then we send the link to our GraphQL endpoint.
Gotcha. So let's go back out and get that. That's here. So we'll copy that.
Yeah.
And then, okay.
And then to test it, we can easily now use the client to run a query and just console log something so that we can see it in the browser.
Okay. So
we run client.query. Okay, and then from there, we pass in an object that has the query field. And then we're going to use a thing called JQL.
JQL?
Yeah, and that's a method that we need to import from Apollo Boost. You can, yeah, comma, and then...
this.
With G.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this might not, because Apollo client is a default export, it should stay outside the curly braces. And JQL stays within the... I've just read about this morning, just to double check that I'm understanding things correctly. Dan Abramov has written an amazing response to Stack Overflow on this. And we use JQL for basically for parsing the query into an abstract syntax tree and that will make it easier to just parse things. So after query, you write, instead of quotes, you write GraphQL, and then you use the symbol, the one, how do you call it? It's the quote, but the inverse one. Perfect, yeah. And then you add the last one, the second one, just to close the, okay, perfect. And then the query that you want to execute is the one that you have in the, in GraphQL.
Ah, this is this one here.
Yeah, we just copy it from there.
Here, like this.
Yeah.
Don't I need to put this in like parentheses or something? What is this? How does this work?
That's the syntax. It's weird, right?
What is this? This is a function.
Function.
I don't need to put this in parentheses like this?
Nope.
How does that work?
I have no idea. We can ask Google.
Is that a JavaScript? Have you ever seen that before?
No, it's the first time. But it's it's a string, right? And we're passing in a string somehow.
we're not passing it anything. It should be here, right there.
So, creators of GraphQL, if you're listening.
What is happening?
Why is this so weird?
JavaScript that I do not understand.
It's the very first time I've used this as well. Okay, so then this returns a promise, query returns a promise. So what we want to do is add a .then at the end of okay, and then take the result and console log it. Cool, so now if you save this and you go back to your browser, hopefully we will see some data coming in.
Okay.
If you open the inspect element, open the developer tools.
Failed to fetch.
Is it a CORS issue?
I thought we turned CORS on.
Maybe we have to turn them on into the proxy function.
Huh, okay. Well, let's go back here.
Yeah. And perfect. That's the one.
And
platform.
Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong one. Platform features.
CORS.
CORS Lite.
Our favorite feature of.
Yeah. Let's take this out, and this out, and this out, and we'll put in a star because we love everybody.
Make sure not to share this with Brian.
I know, or Tanya. She won't like that at all.
Yeah.
Look away, Tanya. All right, let's give it another shot.
Okay. Do we see anything?
Pending. There it is. Boom.
4.
We got it.
We got it. We got it. Fantastic. So
there it is. Data, teams, ID 1 and 2. ID 2.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so we've just tested. We have connected from our React application using Apollo client to our GraphQL endpoints, but we haven't used any of the React components, and we haven't used anything. It was just a console log, right? We've used the weird syntax with jQuel and a couple of other stuff. But what we really want to do is kind of use the React components, and probably we're gonna want to display this data into an actual component, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so let's go to our app.js file.
Okay.
We're not going to create any new components. We're going to reuse whatever has been generated for us. And here, just delete the class, or we could use the functional way of.
Oh, a functional component.
Yeah.
A stateless functional component.
Okay. That's app.
Anything you want to any props you want to pass in?
Nope.
Okay. And then
Okay.
we want to put in here
Blah.
So
so in order to send data from our Apollo client into our components, we're going to have to wrap our in index.js. We're going to have to wrap our app component into Apollo provider component.
okay.
So we're going to have to go back to index.js.
All right, let's pull this out here. Let's go back to index.
And then import app provider from React Apollo.
Provider?
Apollo provider.
There we go.
That's the one.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do is below where we're calling React .render, we're just going to add Apollo provider, basically wrap the app component. So an opening tag with Apollo provider. Do you know a shortcut for that?
You mean like this?
Mm-hmm. Okay, close it, and then, yeah, app. Perfect. And then we're going to have to pass in the client constant in Apollo provider. So set client to client. You have to use the curly braces.
Oh, that's like this.
Just one. Okay. This should be enough. That's the only configuration that we need. So, and this basically adds a context for Apollo on the global React context, and it allows us to pass in data.
Okay.
With Apollo client, we connect to the GraphQL URI, and then with Apollo provider, we are adding in that on the React context.
Are we still doing the query up here?
No, that was just a text.
Okay, gotcha. So should I take this out?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then if you go to app.js, basically what we want to do now is define a new query okay, perfect. But then you'll have to import query from React Apollo.
React Apollo?
Yep.
Import query. Is that a default import or just?
You have to use the named import. Yeah. And the way I remember which I have to import from where, basically query is going to be a React component. It's going to be a tag. So coming from React Apollo. And then we have to define a constant, and in that constant, copy our query.
So like const.
Get teams. Okay. And we used the weird JQL.
So do we need that again?
Yeah.
So I need to import that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that comes from Apollo Boost.
Let's move this here. No, hold on. Didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. Let's try it. There we go. All this extra stuff out here.
Okay. There's an extra, yeah. And then let's also add the name of the team and the points.
Okay. Tell you what, let's do it like this.
You don't need the commas here.
Oh, that's right. And look at that. They got taken out for me. Did you see that?
Yeah,
That
that's
was
awesome.
Prettier. Prettier did that. Thank you, Prettier. All right.
Okay, so we have the query. So now we need to, in our app, define a query component.
Here?
Yep.
Okay. So
use the query tag.
the query tag.
Like an HTML. Yeah, and that has to be a tag.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, and then on that query, we define the query that we've just created. And we do that as a property. So inside the tag, we define query equals, equals, and then perfect, get teams. Okay.
Doesn't this need to be inside the return here?
It has to be inside the div.
Inside the div, yeah. Okay, so it's just.
I don't think you need to return. You don't need the return statement, as far as I know.
You don't?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Unless I'm wrong.
We'll try it both ways here and find out. Okay. Does that look right?
Yes, but then we actually have to get that data from the in the query and display it.
Okay, how do we do that?
So it's just close the tab for you, and that's the most annoying thing. You have to kind of expand back, close query and open query.
Like this.
Yeah. And don't save, because it will do that again. And inside, you're gonna have to, the syntax is curly braces, okay, and then parenthesis, just one, parenthesis, the round ones.
Oh, sorry, that was a bracket.
Okay, and then loading comma, and then another curly braces. This is the destructuring part, I think, and then loading comma data.
In as a string or just loading?
Yeah, exactly. And then close the curly braces and close parentheses also. Okay, and then anonymous function, lambda, fat arrow.
I need a comma, right?
No.
I got you. So it's just going into a function. Okay, yeah. I'm with you.
Okay, and now basically you can add, we can check whether whenever data is not loading, so exclamation mark loading. Okay, and data double end. Double ampersand.
Oh, gotcha. And.
Okay.
So if it's not loading, and
data.teams.map. Now we're mapping over the data. Okay. Let's say T or team. And now we're displaying it in a paragraph.
I need to return one of these. I can never remember.
I think it will save. When you save, it will
automatically do it.
Yeah.
So, and then we're just going to put what, team here, like this?
Team.name, let's say.
Okay. And then what am I missing here?
Can you just save for now? Okay, let's fix the name. Okay. And you don't need the curly braces after the after a team, after the fat arrow.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Perfect. So if we go back to the browser and try to refresh this, see if
what is this line saying here, Simona? This says not loading and data.teams.map. I don't understand how this works.
So what we're doing here is if we're not loading, because if you go back to your browser just for a second, I'm not sure if we're still seeing anything. No, but I think if you went to your browser in the beginning, we saw that the object that's being returned has the data and the loading status and a couple more things. That was the object that has been returned to us. I'm not like, okay, so now what we're doing here is in app.js. We are reading the loading and the data information from the result of the query. And then we're checking if we're not loading the information, we go ahead and map the teams array. And for each element, we are displaying the team name. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just I don't understand how because there's no logic operators here, right? I would expect this to be written as if not loading and data.teams, then data.teams.map, right? Is this essentially what this line is doing?
Yeah.
How
exactly.
How does that work? I don't understand how. I guess my JavaScript's not where it should be in the sense that this line doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, I've just seen it on the internet and I've just copied it.
That's crazy. I wonder how that works. Not loading and data.teams.
If it's not loading, then you can map, right? And you can map.
Man, that's nuts. I don't know how that works, and I'm not exactly sure how to read that, but I'll take your word for it. I don't know what I'm doing, like everything else in life.
Well, it does seem that we have some errors in the browser, though, right?
All right, so let's check it out.
So maybe something's not working.
Nothing was returned from render.
Okay, so it seems like you have to return. Oh.
From here.
Can you just delete the return statement?
Like this.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be working.
No.
Can you go back? Instead of using curly braces, I mean, this is just me guessing. Can you use the parenthesis?
Where's this?
After app fat arrow.
Ah.
And then delete the, yeah. Okay. I mean, JavaScript has become a mystery to me as well.
I mean, this syntax is just, all of this is just weird.
Yeah. I fully agree.
Okay, so React.dom.render, nothing was returned from here. Really?
But you didn't remove anything from there, right?
No. Query, nothing was returned here. Is it because it needs to be, does there need to be a return here?
Nope.
It should be returned automatically.
Okay.
You got to return. Clearly, I know nothing about JavaScript. That's what I've learned from this experience. All right.
We need to display this in a div.
Maybe. In a div. And it says team.name.
Before. Oh, that has to be in curly braces as well. Data binding.
There we go. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So you want to so we're in a div. You want to put it in another div?
No, this is fine.
Okay.
Okay, so we're displaying the data from the GraphQL endpoint.
Yes.
And the other thing that I wanted us to do is kind of add a more fancy visualization where we displayed this in a SVG.
Oh,
I can send you the code snippet so that it's easier to just go through this.
Sure. You want to just can you just paste it in? You should have access.
Yeah. I don't think I have access to to this instance of
Live share? Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me start a new one here. And I will paste it over here.
Phew, we're past that.
And you can access my my local host.
That's awesome.
I know, that's one of the coolest features of live share, I think.
You had mentioned to me at some point that you can also access database instances.
Yeah, so like if you have a MongoDB, you can do anything that's TCP. So you could do I can't get to it because this is in the way, but you could do on shared servers, you could do a new server. And if it's MongoDB, you could share port 27017 and then just call it MongoDB. And then the person on the other end could just open up Robo3T or whatever Mongo instance they're using and can access my local Mongo instance. There you are, you just joined.
That's so awesome.
I know, it's very, very cool. Okay.
Yay.
Now you should have access to app.js.
I do. So
there you are.
I just pasted.
Whoa! All right. Inside the query,
it's not a lot.
Passing in those two parameters, div.
Created an SVG, wrapped everything in an SVG.
So again, this says if not loading. So if it's not loading and what does this part say? Data.teams exists?
Yeah, and I can map over it.
Add a circle. And with an ID. In my mind, I'm trying to visualize what this is going to look like before. Should be two circles.
Exactly, because we have two teams. So basically, we are defining the x axis, the x point for each circle as the ID multiplied by 50, or it can be plus 50. It should be very similar. And this means that our circles will be shown separately. And then the y-axis remains the same. And we are defining the radius of the circle as the number of points of each team divided by 1,000, because our teams have like 20,000 points. So if we were to have a 20,000 radius circle, that would be way too much.
And so basically the larger circle, the more points you have, the larger your circle is going to be.
Exactly. And then we have kind of a margin, right? A stroke of color black. The width is 3, and then we are filling the color with the name of the team, because we've named our teams red and green.
I've got it. I'm ready to see it.
Let's do it.
Let's check it out. Ah, there we go.
Woohoo! That's a beautiful 2 circles.
I know. And look, they scale because they're SVG.
Exactly.
Let's mess around. What happens if you change this to 10,000?
They're like super tiny.
Oh, they're tiny. They get tinier. So if we change it to 10. Boom! It's enormous.
It's all green.
Oh, it's a square. That's weird.
I think it's because, remember, we defined the width and the height of the SVG to 700.
Oh, that's right. So we're getting clipped. What if we take this out here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then it just gets set on its own. Now I'm just
Yeah.
messing with with SVG. Will this work? That works.
Sarah would be proud of us.
I know. Actually, I don't know. She'd be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You don't know. Okay, anyway, so this was, we'll change it back.
Okay. And then the points were 1,000. I mean, this is really kind of hard coding because if the numbers get bigger, we're not going to have good results. But one more thing that I want to show here is that we can actually we can poll on the query. So we can make requests every X number of seconds. And we can
really?
Yeah, in the query element, after you define the query, you can do space and poll interval. And this is in milliseconds, so you can give it a 1,000 or 2,000, whichever you prefer. And I think this one has to be in square brackets as well, curly brackets.
Really?
Curly braces. I think everything is with curly braces.
All right, so yeah, I can see it. It's going. So if we pull up,
let's do this one thing. Let's go back to the React. Okay. To the page with the circles and kind of inspect, look at the element, the green circle. You can do that by taking, yeah. And you can see there the radius. And now if in GraphQL we increase the size, you should see the updated version here as well.
All right, let me see. Let me see if we can do both of these things at the same time here. So let's pull this off. Center it, and then let me collapse this here. So actually, we'll do it over here so we can actually see what's happening. So here, we need to do a mutation, right?
Yeah.
So is it mutation? No.
You delete query, I think. Mutation, increment point instead of T. Yeah. Okay. ID. You only want to increase ID 2. That's the green.
Okay.
Okay. And then what you return there, you go after the parentheses.
Expected name.
Can you delete that?
Yeah.
Everything. Can you select all? Control A. Delete. Mutation.
Okay.
And then, okay, space increment points. Does that work? No. I
forget how to do this.
I always forget the syntax as well. Let me just look at my history.
Expected, yeah. So it wants this.
Yeah, now you increment points, perfect. And then you pass in the arguments. Okay. I'm not sure if you have to say ID dot.
Found expected name. Found int 2.
Can you try ID and then colon 2? Okay, and now return the fields using curly braces.
Where? Like here?
Yeah. And be like name. We got it.
Yes. Okay. So,
okay.
it went to lunch. 20267.
Okay. Does it update?
I'm watching the radius.
Yeah, that's the one you
There it
should.
is. Yeah, it just updated.
Woohoo!
Yep,
Oh,
it's
because it
going.
updates every second, so it does take a while.
There we go. I wonder if can we click it enough to where we can actually see it?
I've tried that. It doesn't work.
It takes too long.
Yeah.
It's definitely working.
Yeah. So we're using the graphical interface to mutate data that's stored in Cosmos DB, and then we're reading that, and we're querying using the React app every second, and we're updating that automatically. Programming is magic, right?
It is. I'm noticing that it's just barely changing. It's like 0.38, 0.39. It took forever to actually see it change on the circle.
Yeah.
That is rad.
We could continue by implementing a mutation as well, or we could stop here and just leave it as a homework.
Yeah, I think maybe we should leave that for folks to figure out on their own here. But this was pretty amazing. Specifically for me, I am still sort of mystified at how some of this even works. So I understand that this Apollo provider comes in and is passing in this client, which is the Apollo client. But why are we using Apollo here? Why are there not standard GraphQL libraries?
You could also use, there's a thing called GraphQL request, and that's pretty much very generic. There's also a relay client, but why do we care about clients and we don't just make an HTTP request? I think one of the main reasons why we want to do that is because of caching. Because Apollo client will go ahead and cache data for us. And actually, in their latest version, they have their own implementation of state management.
Interesting. Okay,
that's
so
more information. That's more than what you asked for. I think the main reason why you'd want to use Apollo client and not just a random HTTP client or just HTTP is because you'd want to cache your data, and Apollo implements all of that for you.
Okay, that's interesting. So the Apollo provider is specific for React that you can pass a client to a component. The component receives the client magically. It doesn't have, there's no prop.
Because this Apollo provider will be set on the global context.
Gotcha. And then here we have to use this React Apollo to define a query. And then inside of that, we're passing in our query and then the poll interval. So this gives us some additional nice things that we can do. So we could do stuff like polling, and it's just as easy as setting an attribute.
Yeah.
And then whenever the request returns, this is basically like the return from an HTTP request.
Exactly.
And we get two objects, loading and data. If we were to actually inspect the HTTP request, we would see these two properties on the object.
Yeah.
And then we have this crazy syntax here, which I still don't understand.
If you want, we could replace it with if, and we should see the exact same thing.
All right, so let's do that just for the fun of it, because I feel like it should be like this. If not loading and data.teams, right? If those two things are true, in other words, if it's not loading and there's some actual data to show.
Exactly.
Actually, you don't even need this one, because if there's no data to show, then it's just going to loop over and show nothing, right? There's no map to do. So do you even need this?
Data, if teams exist. No, let's just go ahead and map over it.
Okay. Then we will map over it.
I'm not sure if, so Apollo, I don't think it will ever return a null object.
But if for some reason you didn't get teams back, for some reason, if it wasn't there, then at least it won't barf.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like this. Is it because of this? Likes that better.
I find that weird.
Should work.
Let's see. Okay, it's exactly the same.
Let's see.
With tons of errors.
Nope. It cannot read property map of undefined.
Okay. Oh, what's with
what is that? It's not supposed to be there, is it? Huh. What is happening here?
I do think that you need the curly braces because it says that this is an expression.
But then, you know what it is?
Mm.
You cannot use an if inside of an expression.
There you go.
That's why it has to be like that.
Has to be that very.
But then I would expect it to be like this. Like a proper ternary.
Okay. Okay, so then you have to pass it in the what happens for the false?
Like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get like a...
Loading.
Something like this.
Okay.
Okay, so that works. That's what it is. Okay, so that's a React thing. You can't stick an if state, and I seem to recall that now.
Because this is JSX, and that's how it works, right?
That's right. Okay.
Okay.
We have done a lot.
We have discovered JQL syntax and
things in JavaScript that make no sense at all. And by the way, stuff like this like let's go back to that other syntax real quick. This kind of stuff right here is why people are always hating on JavaScript, because of the fact that you actually can do this. So you want to get all the way back there. The fact that this right here works, this is why people get mad at JavaScript. And they're like, that's not a real programming language. You shouldn't be able to do that.
I mean, it's succinct. You only need a single line of code.
I agree. But it is confusing to look at it and you're like, that does not make any sense. Like, it's not intuitive. You just have to know that that's how the language works. But
yeah.
All right. We will have all of the links for these sessions in the notes to this video at the very least. And you can find me on Twitter at Burr Collins.
And I'm Simona_Cotin.
And you should follow Simona, not me, because she's clearly the one who understands what's going on here. If nothing has been made more abundantly clear, it's that I don't know what I'm doing. So, yeah, we appreciate you joining us for these 3 videos. And thank you, Simona, for teaching me about GraphQL. Officially, everything I know about GraphQL, I've learned from you. That is not an exaggeration, so thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Burke. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Burke, for taking the time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.